Councillor Foote, would you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Just as a reminder, emergency exits are at the back of the room and the side of the room, and please silence all cell phones. We'll start with roll call. Councillor Mills.
Good evening.
Councillor Healy.
Good evening.
Councillor Webb.
Good evening.
Councillor Chase.
Good evening.
Councillor Foote.
Good evening.
And good evening from the chair. Councillor Flood will not be joining us this evening. All right. We do have a consent agenda. I think it's just one thing on there. Yep. Consent agenda to approve item 2642 to approve the minutes from the April 16th, 2026 budget workshop.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right. On the motion, Councillor Mills.
Yes.
Councillor Healy.
Yes.
Councillor Webb.
Yes.
Councillor Chase.
Yes.
Councillor Foote.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Motion passes 7-0. All right, we are here tonight for public hearing for 2631, Resolution 2026-018, to adopt the FY27 town budget and FY27 to FY32 capital improvement plan, and I will turn it over to Town Administrator Mike Fowler.
All right, good evening. So tonight, this is one of the final steps in our fiscal 27 budget and our 6-year CIP plan. We've had a couple of budget workshops, and we did an initial presentation on April 7th. So let me just go through some of the highlights as to the overall budget. It is definitely a year-round process. We have to, be on top of the data points. Looking at projected valuations, there's always constant consultation with planning and economic development about what's in the pipeline. That's an important projection that we have to look at as far as setting the tax rate. Inflation data, obviously we keep an eye on that pretty religiously just because of world events, and that has an impact on how much we can raise as a maximum cap on our tax rate. Coordination with department heads on any of their staffing needs if anything has changed. Obviously, preliminary quotes have to be sought, and sometimes that takes a lot of lead time to get an accurate quote, knowing that sometimes you won't have possession of that vehicle or that equipment for maybe 2 to 3 years in some instances. And then obviously financial projections from our CFO on motor vehicle registrations and interest incomes. That's obviously, looking at the data and providing that. So get a lot of input from everybody that you see here behind me, and they all do a wonderful job at keeping the data fresh so that we can provide accurate projections to the town council. So let's start with what the tax rate is for the past year, tax year 2025. Town rate is $5.39, and I highlighted the yellow just for illustration that in the last year it went up 14 cents at 2.66% on the tax rate, and that is only a portion of the total rate of $18.99. So the next slide is to illustrate that this budget only is reflecting 28% of the expenditures in that comprise of the $18.99 total tax rate. All the other individual groups have their own legislative process that don't involve the group that's here tonight. Okay, now one of the areas that is very important to talk about is that we have a tax cap, and we have had in Derry for many years, and it's in our town charter. So the way that it works is the 2026 tax rate maximum increase is determined by the trailing year's consumer price index. So for CPI-U Northeast, it's estimated at 3.3%. And when you take last year's tax rate at $5.39, add 3.3%, the maximum allowable is 5.57. So $5.57 is what we're working on as the maximum rate. The capital improvement program must fit within the allowable increase in the tax cap without depleting the capital reserve funds for each department. So that's also important to know that we have to make all of that fit within the tax cap number. When we look at valuation, this is another important part of the equation. So on or about April 1st of each year, the assessor looks at any of the new construction that had happened in the previous year and assesses that and puts that on the roll for 2026. In the trailing year, we had made an estimate that there was $20 million of new valuation. The actual valuation increased by $55 million. So that was a really positive development on that. Fiscal 2027, again, consulting with numerous departments, we're looking at about $50 million of new valuation for projects that have been completed. And again, we also want to point out there's additional development within the DCC TIF district, Abbott Court, and that ultimately supports the TIF district expenditures, and that would be out in fiscal 28 and beyond. So let's take a look at the tax rates. So one of the things that I have in front of you is looking at the last 10 years and seeing what the CPI is. Now, not in all cases did the council take an action to put in the full value to the tax cap. But you can see on the left, the numbers you went through fiscal 18 to 22, all those years had under 2% inflation, and that's, guided and restricted what the town's budget could be increased by. Then the COVID or post-COVID years hit. Those are highlighted in yellow. Now we've come back down to maybe more normalized. I'm not sure if, I'm not an economist. I can't predict what the future years would be like, but we're trending around 3% per year after those two spike years. So just to kind of give you some history of where that tax rate has been increased. And again, this is just a data point for the CPIU Northeast. It's just a running index that you look back and what we ended up doing was you take those two numbers, you can apply them year over year, you can apply them over a 10-year period, but it gives you an idea of what the inflation increases are. I'm sure in each individual, homeowner, they can say, geez, my price of heating oil has really, not reflected this, or the cost of a vehicle, but it's a blended average that the federal government keeps, and it's an important benchmark that they report each month. So one of the things that's within our budget that we do end up having to talk about is our budget is definitely reflective of local, regional, and global economic trends. So the CPIU is up 32% since July 2017. But we also have a number of products that haven't followed that. For example, we put down 3,500 tons of salt a year. That price was $54 a ton back then. It's now almost $80 a ton, and we're waiting a new price. So that's 47% increase. Trash disposal, that was $64 a ton. Now that's $105 per ton. That's a 65% increase. One of the largest drivers in this year's budget has been the increase of employee health care. So again, for the public's edification, we generally, our employees are covered with comprehensive health care at 87% town share. There's one contract that is not that way because they have an alternate health system, but essentially those costs are driven in our personnel budget. So just to put this into context, for the plans are essentially the same from 10 years ago to what they are now, but an Anthem AB 15 plan, the total cost, again, we didn't break it down between employee and employer, but essentially all three categories, one person, two person, family, that's up 90% since FY18. And we had a pretty significant spike this year of 27%. So you can imagine what that means as far as us having to, try to balance this budget within the tax cap. So I do want to talk about how do we manage the tax cap. So we have to leverage, state and federal grants for operations and infrastructure. All of the major departments are constantly looking for those grant opportunities to leverage our funds with state or federal funds. We've been really good at looking at energy efficiency projects. We have a solar field that is going online very shortly at the landfill. We have always been involved with cooperative purchasing of materials, either through state or other cooperative bids. We also look at right-time capital improvements. We try to wait until something has to be replaced, but we don't want to wait too long until the repair bills are too high. We also have effective use of fund balances that have been placed for specific purposes, and then in some instances, quite honestly, the town goes without. And that's just the reality. Items such as curbside trash pickup. There's several positions that other peer communities have, perhaps deputies or additional, folks on the line that we just can't afford. So every decision we have to really take a hard look at because of the tax cap and all of the other factors that come into play. So what does our budget support? So emergency services, 24/7, 365, full fire and police. Our municipal center is open 45 hours per week, Monday through Friday, for in-person services, and obviously people can utilize online servicing as well. We have a full service drop-off transfer station. We have our DPW operations for road maintenance and building maintenance. We have 2 highly regarded libraries that are operated. And then we have recreational activities, parks year-round, including tennis courts, rail trail, hiking areas, conservation parcels, summer concerts, and fireworks. Additionally, we have access to government meetings through DerryCAM. We support a number of social service programs. Just want to make a point that the users support the water and sewer systems. That's not covered by the general fund taxes, although you'll see references to that in this budget. Only the people that are utilizing those services are paying for those costs. The TIF district revenue support activities within the boundaries of the district. We have 2 of them, which are called the Dairy Commerce Corridor TIF and the Gateway TIF district. And then, as we had mentioned earlier, the capital improvement plan is also covered within the annual budget. So these are the final details we went through a number of discussions with council. You had a few minor adjustments. I went over those adjustments on the 21st. But essentially what you see here is a list of all the different categories: general fund, capital improvements, capital bonds, water fund, wastewater fund, cable revolving fund, TIF districts, and then we have revenues. And so in the end, what you see at the bottom is what we started with. The tax rate last year was $5.39. This budget delivers, when it nets out after revenues are subtracted, $5.57, which matches the 3.3% increase. So to put it into perspective for, real terms, on an average $500,000 assessed home in Derry, and we have, that's pretty close to the average. If you go up at that 3.3% increase, that's a $90 increase over last year's tax rate. And again, remember, that is only one portion of the 4 legs within your tax bill. Okay, and again, just to put this a little bit larger here, gross appropriations are $77,914,185. Once you subtract out revenues, veterans credit, and overlay, we come down to the bottom line of $31,818,022. You divide it by the total estimated valuation of $5.7 billion, and that's how we arrive at the 5.57 tax rate. Again, just want to go through some of the major variances year over year. These are the big drivers in our budget. Full-time wages, because of union contracts that were recently settled, those are up 5.2% over last year. It's important to note that that is representative of steps for, as a junior employee works their way through and gets more proficient, you have to compensate them, and also cost of livings that are enveloped within there. Health insurance, as I had referenced earlier, that's up 27.4%. That was a pretty vicious spike for the town to have to absorb this year. Workers' comp is up 9.4%. That's just been a trend that we've seen. Retirement contributions are up 7.1%. Again, that's a result of just increased full-time wages. IT service contracts up 4.8%. We are dropping our electricity 12.9% as a result of better costs that we're getting as a result of the solar field going online. And then lastly, one of the concerns that we had in our budget was to make sure that typically roadway maintenance is funded at around the $1.6 million level. And the council's done a great job at keeping up with that as time has gone on. We did an assessment and looked at the condition of the roads townwide, and they're at an 88, which is the highest number that we've had. It's beyond the good category. We also have a number of projects that are concurrent that are going to continue to enhance the road, such as Shanita Road, Exit 4A. So those projects are going to also enhance the road, and we felt it was prudent this year to help with some of the other pressures on our budget to reduce the roadway maintenance budget by $250,000. So major goals of the fiscal 27 budget. We want to continue favorable momentum in our development train. We want to sustain core functions, emergency and regular town service. This does meet the town charter with the 3.3 tax rate increase. We also had, as part of the negotiations, address competitiveness in pay through the CBA Implementation Trust Fund. So we are utilizing a significant amount of money in that fund to make sure that we don't continue to see some hemorrhaging of police officers, firefighters, and DPW employees. We're going to continue to support the TIF district economic expansion, and it continues to support infrastructure growth, water, sewer, and Exit 4A. A couple of highlights that I just want to put out there. All staffing levels, capital and debt service are funded within this budget. The administrator's budget does include one new full-time position, which is a building inspector. And again, that's reflective of the development that we're seeing out in the field. We don't want people to be waiting unnecessarily for permits and responses on that. And it's been something we've identified for a number of years, but just couldn't afford. But now we think the revenues can support that. Revenues in motor vehicles, that's up 4%. Interest income, we've projected up 4% as well. And then state sources, mainly rooms and meals tax, that's up 2.6%. And then, as we had mentioned earlier, the roadway management program is reduced as a one-year adjustment by $250,000. Again, some other variances: full-time wages, health insurance, workers' comp, electricity, and IT contracts. One of the features of this budget is the use of dedicated funds. So the CBA Implementation Trust has been built over the last 5 years, and we are requesting use of $1.275 million, primarily to overcome the health insurance increase. That wasn't anticipated last year. I believe we had a 15% increase, but to make the budget work within the tax cap, that is one of the relief measures that we're looking to do. We're also seeking to use $569,000 of fund balance. That's been a regular practice of the council. There's still $444,000 of COVID trust per previous designation by town council. And then we also moved $675,000 for compensated absence funds, similar contributions for past years. This is for if we have an employee who leaves and has a large earned time balance or whatnot, we have funds at our disposal to make that without making an unnecessary hit on the existing year's budget. Okay, so to cap off, this is the schedule that we've gone through. So this is the fifth opportunity to go through some of the discussions on the budget and the CIP. The council is scheduled to vote on May 5th to adopt both of those budgets, and your playbook will look something like this. You have two resolutions, public hearing, and two resolutions for the water and sewer rates that'll be in effect for FY27. And then you have two resolutions, one to adopt the town budget, FY27, and a second one to adopt the FY27 to 32 capital improvement plan, and we'll go over that here momentarily. All right, so I guess one of the questions, did you want to break and have any questions on the budget? We can do that, or would you rather me steam through the CIP and take any questions and public comment at that point?
Yeah, I think if you want to finish your presentation, then we
Okay.
can do the public hearing, and then councilors can ask questions from there, if that's
Great.
all right with everyone.
Okay. All right, thank you, Owen. All right, so now looking at the FY27 to FY32 CIP. Again, this is a really iterative process, a lot of help from department heads and senior staff looking at needs in about four categories. So we're looking to replace existing units that are due to be replaced on their age or their future projected repair cost. If there's an enhanced service opportunity, you'll see some of those. A bonded or grant-funded project for a utility expansion, and then ongoing maintenance for roads. So generally they fall into those four categories. Process starts before January of 26, but typically all the department heads submit their needs and cost estimates to the town administrator and the CFO. We review that, take that to the planning board in mid-February. Then we look at this and see how it can fit within the budgets that's been submitted by each department. In April, then we bring it to town council, and then on May 5th, the adoption date. So the 6-year plan values out to $62.5 million. The general fund is covering $30.4 million, the water fund at $12.9 million, and then the wastewater fund has $19.9 million. So sounds like a substantial number, but looking at fiscal 27, $26.6 million of projects. General fund, $7.4 million, water fund's $11.6, and the wastewater fund is $7.6 million. Now, this is where this gets interesting. So in many instances, the town has the opportunity to receive a grant up to 100% reimbursement. So one of the things that's been going on, the Southern New Hampshire Regional Water Project is furnishing $11.3 million in grant funding, and that is 100% of the cost that's represented as an expenditure, so it's no net cost to the town. Vehicles and certain classes of equipment usually are put on a spread finance, so 5 to 7 or 7-year financing packages. Those are competitively bid. But what this does is it promotes level payment, so if we take a package of several vehicles or equipment, market those to all the different banks, and we get sets of principal and interest payments that can be woven in, and so we have some predictability of what we can and can't afford. Nearly $10 million of that $62 million plan is committed to pavement management, and that is supported through annual tax receipts, so you see that within your annual budget each year. And then, per your council policy, unrestricted fund balance proceeds are distributed to each department's capital reserve fund, along with use of current fiscal year funds. So those are some of the mechanisms that we use to fund that, and again, fall within the tax cap. So looking at the tax impact of the CIP projects, you can see in the yellow, that's $1.14 of net tax impact on FY26. For fiscal 27, we're at $1.10. And then the projects, as you move further out, sometimes we maybe don't have as good of a handle on some of the projects out to the 6th or 7th year. But again, that project list is updated annually, but just wanted to give everybody an idea of what those ramifications are on our tax rate. Again, this is just a large summary of this. It's probably too small for everybody to see in the audience, but this is just a summary of all the various departments and all the various line items and how they total together for the large-scale plan that we've put together. Let me go through some of the highlights of each department. The police department, they're looking to replace 6 of their vehicles with hybrid police interceptors. And again, the old ones are shown on the left. The new versions are there on the right. Again, just to highlight, we are specifying hybrids because the value in terms of reduced fuel usage was borne out, and we feel that that's going to be an actionable item to, again, continue to keep the taxpayers' money solvent. There's also $93,358 for an ongoing communications contract. And then there's another hybrid police interceptor for the K9 cruiser at just under $60,000. In DPW, they're looking to purchase a new sidewalk machine at $200,000. This is a frontline plow truck, an or 5500 with plow, wing plow, and front plow. That's $165,000. A chipper, $75,000. 3 smaller pickup trucks equipped with plows at $65,000 times 3, and those are situated in various divisions. One might be in highway, another one might be in parks. So those are replaced as needed in the cycle that we have established by the department head. To support the code enforcement director, the code enforcement position that we are seeking to add, we obviously need a vehicle to support that individual to do their inspections, so we're proposing a 1500 truck for $60,000. In the Parks Department, one of the areas looking to maybe be a force multiplier as a ball field groomer. We're seeing more and more teams seeking to play as the weather allows. So that was a recommendation by the Parks and Recreation Director. At the transfer station, we had damage to a former, basically it was a tarped shed, and we're looking to replace it with a steel transfer station pre-engineered building to allow our trash trailers to be undercover so that they don't be subjected to the weather, and they can go out of here as legal loads. $1.35 million for the pavement management program, and that was reduced for fiscal '27. In fire, $1.3 million for an engine replacement. I think it's been well chronicled that if we go ahead and specify and pay for this, it may be several years because of the just the way that the fire engine manufacturing process and fewer companies that are out there. That is a challenge for municipalities across the Northeast and across the nation. So we need to jump on that. And then also an ambulance replacement at $446,500. In the water division, as I had mentioned, the projects ahead of them in the water division is looking at phase 2 with a tank and with a new water main along Old Derry Road. DES had also provided some indication that phase 2A and phase 2B were going to cost $11.3 million. So within the CIP, you'll see that represented. Council voted to accept those grant funds on March 3rd, 2026 to secure no net cost to the ratepayers or taxpayers. In wastewater, a couple of projects of note. 1,500 feet of effluent force main is going to cost $1.4 million. We have the sewer main talking about Route 28 from the Frost Farm working in a southerly direction towards Ryan's Hill. Design is being underway as we speak, and that it was within the FY26 CIP. The next phase of this would be construction funds, and so an estimate of $6.181 million is in the FY27 CIP. And an EPA grant will cover 80% of an original cost estimate of $3.2 million. So that's also represented in the CIP. So with that, those are the major projects, and happy to answer any questions or take the public comment.
Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Madam Chair, I move to open public hearing.
Second that.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Public hearing is open if anyone would like to come up and speak about the budget or the CIP. Just come on up.
I like being first.
Good evening, Council. Brian Churchello, 6 Rollins Street. I just first want to congratulate this council and the town administrator for putting together a outstanding budget. We all know that the town of Derry operates under a tax cap. I like the tax cap. I always tout the tax cap. A lot of people do not like the tax cap, but the town of Derry's operated under a tax cap for 33 years, by the way. It started in 1993. Never been overridden. And look what we've got done. And all the good work that the council has done over the years is fantastic. A couple of things. I thought that adding the building inspector was a smart move. I know Bob Mackey was a really smart guy and was here for many years and could do a lot. And then we have Miss Owen come in. She's newer, so with all of the building and development happening, it's a smart move because I know that it can get slow sometimes with a 2-person office. So that was a smart move. I appreciate you doing that. A couple of concerns that I do have with the budget. And it's not anything particular, but this is going across the whole state. The healthcare costs, as the town administrator mentioned, is something that's really shocking a lot of people. Londonderry got hit with a $2 million increase on their healthcare side of things, which we didn't, but it's significant. And I don't know how sustainable it can be, because when we keep paying that, that's taking away from some of the projects that we want to do. So I think maybe in the future, you may want to have a workshop, a discussion of how we can rein some of that pricing in if possible. The other thing was the concern, and it's not a major concern because Derry's always been in the forefront of the road program. I know that you've cut that back $250,000 to make things work, and I get that because the way the tax cap works, as Mike said, sometimes you have to go without. Well, that's real world, folks, okay? I don't know anybody who has a household that wants to do everything and they can't. They've got to prioritize. However, with the road program, you've got to be careful because those costs are going up as well. So we get less and less done for that money. So hopefully, maybe that's just a one-time thing to make things work. So that's fine. So I want to point out something very interesting. So my calculations bring this out to an 18 cents per thousand of assessed value on a home in Derry. That's what your budget is going to actually produce if passed. 18 cents. And like I mentioned, you guys have done a tremendous job. Unfortunately, I think people are not going to see that because come December, this town is going to get hit, and hit hard. Okay? School's going way up. I found out that the county is looking at a 12% increase. And so I think there's going to be some angry people. But I want to leave you with one thing. And again, good job, everybody. Mike, very good job. 18 cents on the tax rate for the town. The school is going up $1.99. That's 10 times the amount that you guys can raise. That's 10 years of town that the school's going to raise in 1 year. And if people talk to me, I'll let them know, but they don't know how government necessarily works in town. There's a lot of new people that come in and out. But that's alarming to me. 10 times. Okay? And we all know, because I've sat in that chair for 18 years, come December, they're going to be calling all of you, making the complaint. They're going to be calling him. They're going to be calling the town clerk and the people downstairs. And I don't think that's fair because the town does the hard job, and they always have. And they've prioritized, and we've done a lot of good in this town. And we've thought outside the box, and things work well. Okay, so I just want to say congratulations. I hope that everything works out well, but keep in mind that come December, you may have some angry people. Thank you.
Is there anyone online?
Madam Chair, seeing none, rise online.
All right. Motion to close public hearing.
Second?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? All right. Public hearing is closed. Councilors, do you have any questions or comments? I know you do. Councilor Webb.
Just a couple. Going back to the COVID funds, I believe it's $444,000. At some point, those are going to run out. I know it won't affect this budget, but how do you look at funding that in the future?
Yeah, so I believe, and I have to tell you, I don't have that chart with me, but there was a projection that was made over a 5-year period, and it's obviously a declining balance because the COVID funds came in, they were banked by a council action. This year was $444,000. I do believe that it diminishes and it sunsets. ARPA funds had sunset. You had a period in fiscal 26. I think that was the last revenue allocation. So to your point, yes, that is going to be, again, another challenge we're going to have to incorporate in a future year's budget because that revenue source won't be there.
Yeah. Another question, this is, somebody in my neighborhood asked me this one, which surprised me, is the DPW pickup truck. They said, why don't you get the hybrid like the cruisers? And I said, I promise I'd ask.
Okay. No, it's a great question. So When we typically, we've partnered from day one with Net Zero, Jeff Moulton, Mike Fodem, and the whole committee, and I've had a great opportunity to work with them as we've evaluated various options for hybrid, electric vehicles. Sometimes they make sense. For example, we have 2 vehicles that are used by municipal purposes that are in the parking lot here, which I think have come out great. We were able to get a grant, but those don't have heavy loads on them, right? They go around. The police vehicles, the hybrid vehicles, it was evaluated and it was felt that an electric vehicle
Right.
wouldn't have been suitable for them.
Yeah.
But when you think about the needs for, the hybrids had basically the same performance as a gasoline-fired vehicle. They don't tow anything, they don't push snow, they don't do anything of that nature. So again, that was a suitable use. But when it came to the DPW vehicles, and I can tell you from
I was
my seat,
thinking I think he was talking about the one for the inspector, the new one.
yeah, I guess it's something we could look at. If
Yeah.
it was just a pickup truck versus that, I mean, I would say one of the things that we do try to do specific in public works is a lot of times if you have a lighter use for a vehicle, it might be in buildings and grounds, and then it can be pushed into a plow truck in
Gotcha,
the later
yeah.
years, it gives us that opportunity. So a 1500, a 2500, they have some capabilities to put a plow on the front, but again, we try to push those out for many years. So again, we'll have Tom's here in the audience. He can take a look at that as far as the viability. You have $60,000 in the budget, so
Yeah.
so it is something we could potentially take a peek at.
And the last thing I have is just general comments. And again, thank you. I think a lot of work was done on this, and we just want to endorse Mr. Churchill's comments on the healthcare. But just a reminder to the general public, 90% of our budget is roughly personnel costs. And a lot of that was decided when we did the CBAs. Then the rest is, I call non-discretionary funds like electricity, diesel, even office supplies that you just have to run a department. That only leaves, and I know in the case of like the police department, about 2% discretionary spending. And so, you got to recognize the department heads for being able to bring in new programs when they really only have a couple percent in their budgets of discretionary spending. So that's really nice. But to go back to health insurance at 27.4%, we've got to do a hard look at that. Mm-hmm. So the last time we did it was 1994. I was heavily involved in that, and I remember the numbers that we went from $617 a month for family plan for Blue Cross JW to $450 a month for Anthem Blue Choice. And the council at the time was, oh, that's fantastic, we're saving $200 a month. And if you look at those figures just adjusted by inflation, that $450 a month adjusted for inflation would be $1,150 a month now, or roughly $13,800 a year. We're paying $50,000 a year now for health insurance. And if you adjusted that $13,000 for inflation back in '95, it'd be $31,000. So we've got to take a hard look, because that really does, as those COVID funds go down, as we have to restock the CBA trusts, we've got to really look at that. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Those are my comments for tonight.
Anyone else?
I would just add on the health insurance, I'm concerned with the costs, and I would be interested in maybe pursuing some other options, but I would just be careful when pursuing those options that, I believe the plan that we have right now is very good, and that if we're interested in switching, that we're going to get kind of the same service that we want. I think a lot of the employees are probably happy with the health plan now. I would be interested in seeing what else is out there, but I don't want to also decrease any types of their coverage as well. And I know that would be part of the discussion, and if we do go that route. But I'm pretty confident that a lot of the employees are satisfied with the plan.
Council Mills, did you have something as well?
Yeah, I just had a small comment. I wanted to thank all the department heads that helped put together this budget, because in all my years of doing budgets here and at the state and everything else, I've never seen so much diligence put into a set of budgets requiring us as overseers to not have to do any heavy lifting and sit here having giant debates on, do we need this bus? Do we need this snowplow? Because it's all been done, it's all been looked at, and the fact that we've got everything down to literally 90% of the budget is just wages and salaries makes it a lot easier to go through the rest of these items. So kudos to all the department heads for bringing something that was so diligent. Thank you.
I just want to echo what Councilor Milt said. Looking, excuse me, through the line items, I didn't see any fluff at all. They really did a tight budget this year, and I want to congratulate them on what a fantastic job that they did in keeping the costs low and providing the town what it needs.
I concur.
As do I. I think it may be that 5 years in, I finally have an easier time getting through all the budget stuff, but I felt like, in addition to being very diligent in what they were going to spend on, I really appreciate all of the department heads and Mr. Fowler putting together, when you come in with the presentations, it also makes it easier that I have a list of questions when I walk in the door, and almost all of them get answered. So I really appreciate that thought that's put into what you bring to us, so that we don't, again, have to be asking a lot of questions in the moment and having those discussions, because you've already had them and you've already explained the rationale for them. So great job. Thank you.
Okay, so now what will happen next is on the agenda for the 5-5 meeting. You have those resolutions, and you can go right to the vote pursuant to your agenda that you have. But if there are any questions that pop up either from the public or through your constituents, please get those to me. I'm happy to answer any of those, as I do 365 days a year, if there's any questions about our services.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that is all we have for this evening. So there's no vote tonight. We will be voting on the budget at our meeting, on our regular council meeting on May 5th.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
seeing no further questions or business, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.